Now I'm going to demonstrate tail spool reloading. What I will be doing is following the instructions on the tail spool reloader keypad here. Unfortunately you can't read them, but I'll shout them out as I do it. I've just turned on the rewinder, and what happens first is some diagnostics are run with the optical limit switches inside and some other components, and it tells us here there's no errors and the hardware passed, so we're ready to go. So enter to continue. First thing you come up with is selecting the line type. 3 different types of line depending on the thickness and the braking strength. 300 pound line, 500 pound line, or 800 pound line. Typically 500 pound line is used, but you need to know what type of line you've got, because it affects how the line is loaded onto the tail spool when you're doing rewinding. And you're only going to be asked the line type when you first start up the rewinder, so if for any reason you've changed the line and haven't powered down the rewinder, you'll have to power it down and start it up again to get that selection. So what we'll do here is we'll press 500. Well, we'll turn the backlight on. That's another question you get here. If you're in the dark, then you can have the backlight. We'll have that. Now what's going to do is every single time you go to rewind the tail spool, the guide here will always move to the far left, and then it will move back into the loading position. No matter where you start it from, it'll always go to the left and then move back to the parking position, somewhere near the middle. Will happen every time. So the first important thing we need to do is to make sure the clutch is in slip. The slip mode is specifically for rewinding. If we forget to do that and leave the clutch in off, the rewind will happen, but you'll get a bad wind on the tail spool, and there can be some problems deploying the probe, and I'll cover that later. If you try and rewind with the clutch on full, fairly obvious what's going to happen. The rewinder is going to try and pull line off the winch onto the rewinder, and the spool isn't going to move, so you're going to put a lot of load on the rewinder motors, and you may cause damage to the system. Absolutely make sure before you do any rewinds that the clutch is set to slip. So we've done that, so enter to continue. Now I'm going to load the tail spool. First thing to think about is the connection between the tail spool and the line. Now is a good opportunity to take a look at that line. Every time you deploy the probe, you've got to have a look at this loop splice to make sure it's in good order, there's no fraying, it's in good shape. This is what's holding your investment in instrumentation onto the end of the line, so take care of it. The ring here, always good to make sure periodically there's no burrs or marks on this. This needs to be nice and smooth. Obviously if there's a little nick in it and this line is moving around on top, you could potentially fray the line and cut it off. So we polish these and make sure you keep good care of this. Likewise this screw, this is holding the shackle in. It's got a lock washer or a lock nut depending on what type of tail spool you have. Always check this now and then to make sure it's not worked itself loose. I mean this system, when the probe is being recovered, is subject to quite a lot of movement, and it gets quite a lot of vibration, so you've always got to be careful about this. Whilst we're talking about the tail spool, you can also mention the shims here. You'll notice that there's a set of shims in here, so each probe coupling on the probe that attaches into the tail spool is matched to the tail spool. So it's always a good idea to keep the tail spool and probe together so you get a nice fit between the two. And the shims are there to give a good snug fit without it being too tight or too loose. So now we can load the tail spool. Move the line to the corner like that, so it doesn't get in the way before we put it on the reloader. So first we're going to load this end, push it home, this one's a bit tight, and then this end here, can rotate the reloader piece there to make sure it fits in there. Okay, we've done that. So we'll enter to continue. Now we're going to feed the line through the roller guide. So we come down, do the hook here, over the top of the first roller and under the second roller. Okay. Enter to continue. The enter button gets quite a lot of work here. Take up the line slack. Well, we've done that. It's nice and tight. Okay. Disengage level wind. So when you've finished recovering the probe, oftentimes the level wind's going to be in this position. That's just going to get in the way when we try and do the rewinding. So always make sure this is down here, out of the way. Enter to continue. So ready to start. Rewinding tail spool, enter to continue. So at this point the next click is going to start off our rewinding. So we'll do that. What's going to happen is the traveller is going to move to the end of the tail spool, and that distance that it moves changes slightly every time. This is specially designed to have the optimum line payout when the probe has actually been deployed. So that's our 50 meters of leader. Now we've got another 600 meters to load onto the tail spool. The display here is showing us how many meters of line is on the spool. Right now 80 meters. At the end of every pass it updates the amount. 105 meters. At any point we can press any key to stop. So we just stop the rewinding there at 120 meters. You can see here's a nice tight wind. Should be quite a bit of tension here, so the line is loaded pretty tightly on the tail spool. We want to continue. Yes, we want to load more line. Enter to continue. It'll continue. And if with 500 pound line we can now load up to 650 meters on the tail spool. You may be able to see how it's just moving further out towards the edge at every time. We're currently at 225 meters. You can see here the spool is starting to look quite full, and we have 300 meters loaded. There's actually quite a lot more room on there. Obviously, as the diameter increases, we can get more line on for every pass. But we can still keep going. At 360 meters, still quite a lot more room. Say you just wanted to do a 450 meter cast. All we're going to do is stop the rewinding right about now. 435 meters was here, and we stopped rewinding about 450 meters. But we'll see here that the traveller stopped in the middle of the tail spool, which really isn't too much of a big deal, but we probably recommend usually just stopping it at one end or the other, so you know you've got an even number of passes. So we'll continue, load a bit more. If we stop at the end, 460 meters. If we don't want to do any more, we can press no. If we want to load more line, we can continue even further. So again, this is pretty tight. You'll notice this is very tightly wound. The line is not going to move when you put your thumb over here. Just the odd piece may move a little bit, but it's very tight. So we're going to continue, load a bit more line on here. So what will happen is the rewinder will automatically stop loading line when it reaches the maximum that we've preset. So for this it should be about 650 meters, so we won't allow more and more and more line to be loaded onto the tail spool until it's overflowing on the ends. So we're getting close to the end of the rewinding. Still, it's looking pretty fat now. Maybe surprising you can get all this line on, but it works quite nicely, even with this amount of line on. That's 600 meters. Okay, so that's 650 meters. The most line you're going to get on there with 500 pound line. If you had 300 pound line, the tail spool would look exactly the same in terms of how the thickness of the wind, but as the line diameter is thinner, you'll have more line on. For 300 pound line, you'll have 1,000 meters of line on the tail spool at this position. So you can get a pretty deep profile using that line on the tail spool with 300 pound line. So now, just going to reverse the process and take off the tail spool carefully. Now we're ready to attach the tail spool back onto the probe.